And a warm welcome to those attending and to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible online under the live broadcast. Feedback forms are also available there. For those present in the room and intended to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statements you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to anyone speaking today that your voice will only be audible online if the microphone is switched on, and you'll see that the red collar comes on when the microphone is on. We're not expecting any fire drills, so if the alarm goes off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. A little bit of housekeeping. For those in the room, please switch off any mobile devices before the meeting starts or put them on silent. Before moving on to the agenda, I introduce myself. I'm Councillor John Riley. I'm the Cabinet Member for Public Safety and Transport, and I'd like to ask the other officers present to introduce themselves, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Alan Tilley, Transport Planning and Development Team Manager. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Steve Austin, the Traffic, Parking, Road Safety and School Travel Team Manager.
Good evening. I'm David Knowles and I'm the Council's Head of Transport and Town's Head of Projects.
Good evening. I'm Anisha Tedji and I work in Democratic Services.
Thank you all very much and thank you for being here. As far as the agenda is concerned, declarations of interest in matters coming before this meeting by anybody? No, thank you. And to confirm that the business will take place in public, and to consider the reports of the officers for the various petitions that we have this evening. So I'll move straight away, please, to agenda item 4, which is the Vine Lane Uxbridge petition, requesting a zebra crossing and traffic calming measures. The lead petitioner is with us, Mr. Harding. I've already asked if ward councillors have any declarations of interest, and I see that that is not the case. And as I say, the first item on the agenda is a petitioner's request for a zebra crossing and traffic calming measures in Vine Lane in Uxbridge. Just to let you know that when the traffic light signals green, you have 5 minutes to present your petition. And then amber gives you 1 minute left to give you a 1 minute warning, and red for when the speaking time is finished. So, Mr. Harding, you have 5 minutes, and then any ward councillors, Councillor Graham is here, have up to 3 minutes to speak, and then we can have a discussion after that. So if you'd like to go on. Okay. Thank you.
So I can start, yeah?
Yes, you can.
Do I press this?
Yes, please.
Yep.
Right. I'd just like to start by saying many thanks for the opportunity to put my case on behalf of the local residents in Chestwood Grove, Sylvana Close and Vine Lane concerning the ever-increasing traffic flow in Vine Lane and the problems this is causing, particularly from a safety aspect, which is a growing concern to many, if not all, who have signed this petition, and also those that were not in or available at the time. Having read the proposal submitted by the Council, I would like to comment on several of the points outlined in your submission. Firstly, the introduction of 3 sets of traffic pillows, 2 sets between Sylvana Close and Chestwood Grove, and 1 to the right of Chestwood Grove. In my original petition, submitted in January 2020, I made mention of the difficulty of turning right out of both of these closes where traffic approaching from the left is travelling too fast, sometimes approaching 40 miles an hour in some cases, but no provision has been made to install pillows on Vine Lane to the left of Sylvana Close to slow the traffic down. The existing chicanes are of little use in calming the traffic, as when there are no vehicles approaching from the oncoming direction, drivers tend to drive in the middle of the road, avoiding the humps, making them rather pointless, as their natural reaction is to speed up. Furthermore, why can't proper speed bumps be installed like those in Blossom Way, which appear to be quite effective in slowing traffic down to an acceptable speed? and would not impede coaches who attend the ACS school and other large vehicles such as refuse trucks, fire engines, etc. You are of course aware that there is no proper footpath from the ACS school to past the bend in Vine Lane, which adds to the need for further traffic calming measures along this part of the road, which leads me on to the next point regarding your comment stating why a zebra crossing is impractical at the junction with St Andrew's Way. This is a crossing point for children who attend John Locke Academy, and traffic travelling south to north on Vine Lane speed up here as it is downhill. So in the absence of a zebra crossing, surely either a set of pillows or preferably a proper speed hump should be installed here to make it safer for young children who have to cross here, usually in the rush hours when traffic is at its busiest. Now, I did mention this a few months ago, but was advised that as this potential solution was not part of the original petition, then a new petition would have to be submitted, which quite frankly I find rather preposterous when the safety of children and adults should be paramount in this age of health and safety. Other than that, I would like to conclude that by stating that over a year ago, your representative, who had been to check the situation, agreed that some vehicles were travelling too fast. But I would like to mention that it is the majority doing this, not just some, as those are travelling at a most inappropriate speed, which are of the greatest concern. Additional road signage was also suggested as an interim measure, but to date this has still not been installed, so I'm wondering whether this is still on the agenda. And that is my submission.
All right, Councillor Graham, would you like to add your...
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, I can see the difficulty that there is to install a pedestrian crossing at the point where St Andrew's Road meets Vine Lane because of the lack of pedestrian ways on either side. But I would strongly support the fact that traffic coming round the bend downhill towards Sylvana Close and passing the junction with St Andrew's Road does exceed, for the most part, the speed limit, and I would like to see certainly, possibly, a calming pillow or a wide speed hump, road wide there, because that's, in my view, the most dangerous point. There would need to be, because it's a bend, and as you come along Vine Lane, heading in that direction towards St Andrew's Road, the junction there, it's a blind corner, so there would need to be some signage to warn people that they're scared that there are speed calming measures about to meet them as they turn the corner. The idea of having some means of preventing traffic to the left of Sylvana Close going as fast as it is, I would also support, because it's quite clear from the many times I've passed that way that it is a danger to traffic turning out of Sylvana Close and Chestwood Grove. So having said that, overall, there has definitely been an increase in traffic, and there is now a greater need than ever to provide more measures of safety. Not only are children moving from one side to go to the John Locke Academy, but you've got pupils going the other way from St Andrew's Road to the Hillingdon Court School. So to that extent I support the petition, Councillor.
All right, thank you. Well, clearly we do want to do something here to mitigate the problems which the petitioner has raised. David, can you start?
I'll bring Steve in a minute, because obviously he's done a lot of the background work and it's his report. I think there's a couple of points. First of all, signage, yes, of course, warning signage and things, that can be part and parcel of it, and it seems sensible that that's done all as an integrated part of the scheme. So if the fact there's been talk about having some signage and warning signs, yes, that will be part and parcel of it. We've got to get the detail right. You'll be aware there has been a consultation, and I think that Steve might talk about that in a minute. We're awaiting the final analysis of the feedback from that. I think, without having all the details to hand, I think you might not be too surprised to find that there's probably more support in some of the side roads than there is in Vine Lane itself. It's a common problem, but clearly what we're trying to achieve is some traffic calming in Vine Lane. Perhaps the people who live in Vine Lane are less enthusiastic about it than your good self and your neighbours in the side roads. On the point about another petition, and I realise that sounds on the face of it perhaps a bit bureaucratic nonsense, but I would say that when a petition is submitted, if it's fairly specific and it actually says a number of things, and you obviously took a lot of effort to walk around and talk to your various neighbours, and they said, we sign up to this idea, we think it's a great idea, there is a risk, if we're not careful, that if we change the scope of that, some of those people, and we don't know, might actually say, well, we're not quite so keen on that aspect of it. So I think that the petition is the process for you to come forward and discuss with us the sorts of issues of concern. Now, that's great that you're doing that now. We then go away, scratch our heads, come up with some proposals, which we then do a consultation on. People like yourself and your neighbours say if that's good enough or not, and then we report back on that to, certainly initially the Cabinet member, Councillor Riley, and then we discuss it with Councillor Graham and his colleagues, and then we take something forward. I think it's clear that something needs to be done. I think on the basis of the investigations that there have been so far, the calming that's there at the moment, you'll realise it's been there, I think, 10, 15 years, something like that, I think, with the sort of the chicane arrangement. And it was done something at the time, again, it was done in consultation with the people in Vine Lane at the time, the name Vine Lane being a semi-rural nature, although it's changing over time because, of course, it's got massive development alongside it. And the fact that has been alluded to, the fact there isn't a formal footpath on one side, at the time, I believe, and it wasn't my scheme, but I believe it was a decision taken to come up with something which was a compromise. Now, the problem, of course, I think is what you're probably telling us is that the speeds have gone up and people sort of swerved around these chicanes. So you'd like something a little bit more substantial. So I think, Steve, if you're able to comment, if you don't mind, on the work that's been done so far.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Sorry, just going back to the initial petition, and forgive us if we've misunderstood or misinterpreted what you're asking for. But I've got installation of speed bumps in the vicinity of the mini roundabouts at Silvana Close and Chestwood Grove to facilitate turning right out of both roads. But is that, you mentioned about one turning left, sorry if I misunderstood.
No, traffic coming from the left when you are turning out right from both of these closes. They're coming down far too fast, and there have been a number of near misses. One was a disabled coach picking up one of my neighbour's children, I think round about the Christmas time, and locked up the wheels. If it had been really wet or icy, it had probably gone into the side of the coach. But of course you don't hear about that because it didn't actually happen. The accident didn't happen.
Thank you for that clarity.
Right.
So I appreciate that. Thank you. And in terms of looking at raised tables rather than the cushions, because of the nature of the road and some of the challenges to do with drainage and the lack of footway, then it has presented challenges to what can realistically be achieved in Vine Lane. Certainly we'll take away looking at the possible crossing point at St Andrews again. In order for a safe crossing point to be installed and a formal crossing point to be installed, it has to meet a lot of criteria. And the nature of the road just doesn't allow us to put a zebra crossing in. I think it's probably worse to have an unsafe zebra crossing than no zebra crossing at all. But we'll certainly take that away and have another look at it and review that.
Everyone's talked about the fact that there aren't any footpaths on this road. I mean, I've been and had a look because it's much better to see what you're trying to visualise. I mean, we do have other roads in the borough that are narrow and have narrow footpaths on them. I mean, is there any capacity at all for having any sort of footway, whether it's raised or marked?
I think I'll give you the short answer, no.
No, okay.
There's no point beating about the bush because of the fact that you've got frontages in Vine Lane that come out to the road.
Yeah.
Another example of a road of a similar nature is Cheney Street, if you know that, in the Eastcote area, where there's another again. It's a road of fairly originally of rural nature, and to start introducing footways, you change all the levels for the people's frontages as they come out.
I'm not thinking of raised ones. I'm wondering if there's any capacity to have a marked footway.
Well, you have that already on one side.
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, when it was done at the time, I think again the width of the road is a constraint.
Yeah, I think
because you are allowing traffic to go in both directions.
Yeah.
I mean, those chicane arrangements were fashionable at the time to some extent. You know, you'll find the same in Cheney Street. So I think they were probably done around the same sort of time as people trying to find a traffic calming solution in a road with no footways. Steve makes the very important point that, you know, the raised tables that we do, the flat top tables, Blossom Way you mentioned as an example, they span usually between footways with curbs, and you can put drainage in either side. If you start putting that in where there is no footway, it becomes technically almost not impossible. Nothing's impossible, but they become less viable. Whereas the speed cushions have the benefit in as much as they slow the traffic, but water can get past them. You know, we've found that in other solutions where, for example, there is a road on a hill, and you know, so the worst thing you have is if you've got a road coming down on a hill, you put on a table across it, and all the drains block up. Whereas if you have these cushions, I think the point that you made, sir, was that you felt there were not enough cushions. I think you felt there was one needed the other side of Silvana Close.
One needed.
Yeah.
So there's an additional one needed.
Right.
To the left of Silvana Close, because there's two between Silvana Close and Cheswood Grove, and then one beyond Cheswood Grove, but nothing before Silvana Close.
Well, I think that's something we will take away as a a very helpful suggestion.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Can I also note that it's in the 20-mile limit anyway?
Yes. Yeah. So we're already at 20 mile per hour zone. The question sometimes is how many people will actually abide by that, and then we do have to have discussions with our colleagues in the Metropolitan Police, who are the only people who should do speed enforcement, because it's an endorsable offence, as you know.
Very strongly is looking at other areas where chicanes have been put in the past is to go by. But people these days see them as something of a challenge to get around as quickly as they can, rather than being something that slows them down, which is rather unfortunate, really. So putting things in that make a real difference to how a vehicle crosses the thing that is supposed to slow them down, I think it is probably going to be the better way to go. But we'll certainly take this.
All I would just say, Councillor Riley, is just to be aware of the fact that one of the challenges that we face across London at the moment the financial situation with our dear friends from Transport for London, who are the primary source for the traffic calming. Now, I don't use that as an excuse, but clearly we do need to make sure that we have the ability to fund whatever is actually ultimately decided upon, and that I suspect will just be a factor in terms of the timeline, because we are where we are. You know, I don't wish to go into the details of TfL's woes and what have you, but they normally provide the council with funding every year, and this is the sort of thing that money would normally support. I have every confidence that it will do so, but there was only an announcement last week, I think, from the Mayor of London about his latest settlement with Grant Shapps. So.
At the same time, that there's no reason why we shouldn't work these things up and have them ready to go when we have the resources to do it. And it's not one of these resource issues which is never going to be sorted. It will be sorted, and then you know we'll be able to get on with a lot of these things. But in the meantime, we will go away and look at this and work up, as I say, new traffic calming measures for this road.
Okay, and you'll advise me accordingly in the fullness of time?
Yeah, well, as soon as we can.
Yeah.
As soon as we can, yeah. Because as Mr. Knoll said, we go through a process of working it up. It comes to me, I look at it. Then if it falls into that category of things that has to be consulted on, it goes to consultation, and then we aim to implement if we can, and when we can. So
just to clarify, Chairman, we are talking about Vine Lane on either side of the junction with St Andrews Road, are we? I mean, looking at this highways plan map, there are two posts there, 29 and 30, and it is in that part there where traffic comes round past 27 and 28. It's a fairly blind turn, and then it goes downhill, quite steep, to the junction with St Andrews Road, and from my experience, that needs to be, the traffic there needs to be calmed down.
I think we're focusing on the area of concern to the lead petitioner at this stage. As I said, there's been a consultation which I think we need to report back to Councillor Riley shortly. It may be a decision is made then to proceed with what has been supported by that consultation, but it doesn't preclude us actually doing more work and more, there's more things that have come forward as they have done this evening. I mean, it's then a decision really for Councillor Riley to say, do I go ahead with what has been supported now and at the same time ask people if they want more? Or do we wait for everything? Until we've had the opportunity to consider the results of the consultation. I think it's a discussion. We meet regularly, Councillor Riley, don't we? And it's a thing that we would discuss. In terms of the protocol, sir, I think what normally happens is we come to a point where we discuss with Councillor Riley what our findings are, could be from consulting yourself or other people. We come forward with a proposal. Councillor Riley will normally say, well, I'd like you to run that past Councillor Graham and his colleagues, please. Once everyone in the council is on the same page, then of course you as a lead petitioner are one of the first people to know.
And again, there's nothing wrong with you contacting your local councillors to say, how are things going? Because they'll come to me and say, how are things going? And then we can tell you. Okay? Yep, but there is a normal process by which we would let you know. But as I say, if for any reason you get to a certain point, you think, well, I wonder what's been happening about that, then that's the route to go.
are you then suggesting, with regards to traffic calming round the bend, i.e. somewhere near 29 and 30, that I do need to do another petition, which I need at least 20 signatures, because that, you know, in the absence of a zebra crossing there, something else needs to be put in its place.
May I suggest, sir, I think you let's work with what we've got at the moment.
Okay.
I mean, I can be frank with you. We looked at Vine Lane many times over the years, and different sections and different parts of it, and sometimes at the consultation stage, when we ask the residents, this is what we would like to suggest to you, they tell us what we can do with our proposals, which is probably to put them back in the file. So I think you have done a petition. You've got some thoughts and things which have informed the process we've done so far.
Sure.
You've given us some useful further information. Let's work within that. And if we find that people see that and it delivers something on the ground, they say, I'd like some more of that, please. Then I think perhaps you probably would find that if there is a further petition sometime in the future, people will be knocking at the door to say, I really want to sign it because I want the benefits of that bit down the road.
Sure.
But equally, we know what you've said, and we're aware about of the issues further along, and we can take that into account as we go along. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your time.
going to be heard. Let me just ask both our three officers to introduce themselves first, and then the green light will be pressed, Stephen.
Yeah, good evening. I'll start. My name's David Knowles, and I'm the Head of Transport and Town Centre Projects for the Council. So good evening and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Alan Tilley, Transport Planning and Development Team Manager.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Anisha Teji and I work in Democratic Services.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm Councillor John Riley, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Public Safety and Transport. All right, if you like.
Thank you. Yeah, firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much to Democratic Services for giving me the opportunity, and opportunity to the residents of Harmondsworth to be heard and for you to consider our request. So a bit of background, if I may, about myself. I am Hardeep Luana. I'm Chair of Governors of Harmondsworth Primary School, and I'm the Chairman of the Harmondsworth Horticultural Association. So that is a couple of drivers behind why I'm here today, and why what I'm petitioning for actually impacts on a wide part of our community and residents in Harmondsworth. So part of Harmondsworth is already a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. So before you enter the village, I'm looking at the map which you've kindly given to me. Before you enter the village as you drive up Hatch Lane, which is indicated by numbers 14, 16, 17, 18, 19 on the right-hand side of your map, that area is already a 20-mile-an-hour zone. Yeah. But as soon as you enter the village, which is when you get to the top of the map and you see High Street, the speed limit increases to 30 miles an hour maximum. So our concern is that in the village there is a high number of people who are pedestrians. We have a school in the village, Harmondsworth Primary School. We have over 200 children there. And as a school, we always encourage children to walk to school, to use environmentally friendly ways of coming to school. So that will be cycling, using transport. So in the buses. So in the village, we do not have a bus that takes you direct to the school. So children have to alight outside the village on just before you enter it, and then they're walking through a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and they're having to cross roads as well. So my concern there is the safety of our children, and also you have a lot of vehicles that enter the village at very high speeds, and I've seen it myself, and the residents have also shared that with me. So for example, you might have parents dropping their children off at the school who may be running late in the morning, and they will be doing well over 30 miles an hour. We also have a wonderful church, St Mary's Church, and we have a very old community. A lot of our residents are very old, and for them to get to the church, they have to cross quite a chunky bit of road. And on that road, we are seeing now scooters and mopeds being ridden at very, very high speeds, which again has been brought to my attention. That's a risk as well to people's safety. And not only scooters, it's people in cars as well. So as our people are trying to get to the pubs or over to St Mary's Church, that can be quite a dangerous crossing because of the speed of the vehicles. We also do a road watch as well, and we do that with the Harmondsworth Residents Association. We do that with the local sort of police, but we can only do that outside the village because that's where the 20-mile-an-hour zone is. So if you were to grant this petition and allow us to set the speed limit at 20, we could also do that work inside the village as well and work with the local police community to educate people and sort of with the equipment that the police give us, to educate drivers on the speed limit that should be enforced. And I want this to sort of impact on all villages. So we're looking at the other roads, Summerhouse Lane, Cambridge Close. A lot of these roads are dead-end roads. Yeah? So there's no need for people to be travelling over 20 miles an hour. A lot of the roads have parking, off-street parking. So you've got cars that are backing in onto driveways, and I've seen it myself, some vehicles where they're trying to back out and you've got a car that's travelling over 20 miles an hour. It is dangerous. And the roads aren't that wide in the village. They're very sort of tight. So that all has to be taken into consideration. So for me, it's about, if I can sort of summarise, for me this is something that will improve the life of our residents. And Hillingdon Council is about putting residents first, and I think here this is a really good chance to put the needs of our residents first, make Harmondsworth more safe, allow people to access churches, shops, pubs in a more safer way as well. And also for us to work with the local police to help you sort of educate people and enforce a new speed limit of 20 miles an hour. I think it's a benefit for everybody, what we're proposing here.
All right.
Thank
you very much. Thank you. If you press your button to turn your mic off, that's great. Thank you. You have one of your ward councillors with you. If you'd like to speak, you've got a maximum of 30 minutes. You would wish. 3 minutes.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, and thank you for taking the time for me to talk here. So just a few things, just to echo on a few things that Hardeep has said. It is very confusing when you get to the villages about what's going on. You come off the motorway, come off the M4, you come down Holloway Lane, you can do 60 all the way, then you hit 30, then 20, then 30 again. So I think the whole dynamic of the place, it's confusing. I think we can do with more signage. As you come into the village, like Hardeep said, a lot of the roads are dead-end roads. They're closed. They're cul-de-sacs. A lot of schools. There's a school there with a lot of children, and two pubs. So if you've ever been to the village, which I'm sure you have, you know it's a small place with a small road with small roads, and I think it would greatly benefit if we had a consistent speed limit from Holloway Lane and Hatch Lane, the two roads that are coming into the village. And we've had this before. We had a similar petition over in Sipson a couple of years back, and it has improved. I think 20 miles per hour, it gets less confusing for the drivers, the people who are coming off the motorway and they don't know where they're going, if it was better signposted. I think an initial road survey would help understand the situation of what's going on there. I think down Holloway Lane maybe, but I think Hardy will be best to judge, best person to ask on where we can have the road survey. But yeah, I think as ward councillors, I spoke to some other two ward councillors today as well, we fully support this petition. I think the council should take some action. I think the safety of residents should be put here. And I mean, if you ever go down Holloway Lane, cars are speeding pretty fast down from Holloway to Hatch Lane over the speed bumps. We have numerous complaints of the speed of cars, and when they go over the speed bumps. So I think this will improve residents' lives. Thank you. No.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, every time I get a petition, I always go and have a look at the. I mean, even though I've been there before, it's always good to go and have a look at the venue that's being talked about in regards to the petition to get just obviously a physical idea about what's going on. And sometimes when one goes to various places, you see what is being complained about. Sometimes you don't. It just depends, really. And in terms of speed, sometimes we do find, very often in fact, that perceptions and what we find in terms of surveys can be quite different. I'm not saying it's going to be here, but it can be. Because if you're stood by the side of a road as a pedestrian and someone comes along at 20, 25 and hits a rumble strip or a table or anything, it sounds as bad as it would do at 30, because you're stood there feeling the effect of it. So without needing to go into a desperate amount of detail, I suspect the answer to this one is that we do surveys, speed surveys.
Yes, if you'd like me to comment, Chair. Thank you very much indeed for your petition, sir. And I think the message is very clear and eloquently put. I think, as the report says, there are 20 mile per hour sections already, so there is a logic to what you're asking for. So I think you're pushing in the right direction. I think, actually, as Councillor Riley said, some surveys will be helpful. I think it will prove the veracity, as if anyone doubted what you're saying, but surveys are very, very useful because they provide very compelling evidence. What we do, traffic surveys with the tubes which are put across the ground, they're there for 24 hours, 7 days a week, for usually up to 10 days. And the police once told me they're the most efficient method of recording speed that exists, basically. And they tell not only the speed, but the type of the vehicles that are going through there. I just pick up on one point that you mentioned about the mopeds that are coming through, and I think I've heard this separately, that they're coming down from a combination named Moore Lane, further part of Moore Lane, cutting through where there is a barrier which stops larger vehicles coming through. Allegedly, they're coming through there. So surveys will show actually what the nature of that traffic is that's taking place. So I think we will shortly, with the Chairman's agreement, move to making some suggested locations for surveys from your point of view. The last point I'll just make briefly is I'm also welcome the fact that you are the Chair of Governors for the school. And I would urge you, please, I think we have had some initial contact with the school. It's so important that the school works with my road safety team. We've all been going through difficult times with COVID and everything like that, and I appreciate that the schools have had their own challenges. But there's a great opportunity for us to collaborate. Children are a great message and means of getting that message out to parents and to other people in the community. If we're working on a 20-mile-per-hour zone, for example, the school and the children can be involved in design of some of the signage. So, and I think that would be a great opportunity for the community, I think, to work with us. So I would urge you, sir, because you're obviously in a position of influence, to work with us on that. So I think I'll shut up for the moment and say perhaps we need to look at the surveys, Chairman.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Knowles was saying there, that we really find that whenever we're doing this sort of work, if there is a school involved, working with the school, just it just creates massive dividends. The children are always well aware of these things, way ahead of everybody else, I think, and enthusiastically get involved in helping with, as Mr. Knowles said, signage and also, to be honest, getting the message out. They really are very good at in a similar thing, but not about speed, but about cars idling. In one area, we had the kids would go up to the people that were sat there in their cars with their engines idling, saying, "You shouldn't be doing this." And the effect of that, of a child knocking on the window of a car that's sitting there idling, saying, "Don't idle your engine," it's harming our atmosphere. It's just extraordinary. So it's a very, very good point, and I hope that further work can be done between the school and the team. All right. As Mr. Knowles says, it's always very helpful if when we aim to cite the speed strips. And again, just to emphasise, the amount of information we get out of this is incredible. It's not just whether they're doing over the limit or whatever. It's lots of other information as well. And equally, we can look at all sorts of things like the faces on the signs, the electronic faces and all the rest of it. So there's a range of stuff we can look at. But I think in the first instance, if we discuss very quickly the citing of the speed survey tubes.
Yeah. So I mean, if you have a plan before you, which has got lots of little red spots, which probably makes your eyes go funny looking at them, those little red dots on the plans are the location of lamp columns. And the only reason we include that is because it makes it quite easy for the survey company to identify where they're going to fit these tubes. They have to be fixed. There's a little box that goes at one end of the tube, and it has to be chained to something, because otherwise somebody will look at it and say that's worth some money and they'll steal it. If you chain it to the lamp column, it won't. It seems crazy, but that's the reality of it. So if you were to look at the plan, you may say, well, I know that outside such and such an address, I think there's a problem at the moment with speeding. If you want to choose some locations, it would be very helpful. If you feel that we're putting too much pressure on you to try and do this now, I mean, you can certainly take it away with your ward councillor and let us know. I don't wish to feel you're under too much pressure, but you may well have a clear idea, or indeed, so you may have an idea as well. So if you wish to suggest some locations, we'd be very, very grateful for them.
Or, as Mr. Knowles says, if you want to take it away and come back to us with locations that you think would be an accurate reflection of where speed is taking place, that's fine. I mean, sit down in the comfort of your wherever and plot them out, or tell us now if you like. It's up to you.
How many are we allowed?
For there is no hard and fast rule. I would suggest, if you want my sort of suggestions, I would suggest you might want one somewhere in the High Street. You want possibly one or two in Moor Lane. We certainly want one somewhere up at number 16 if there's an issue with mopeds coming through. So you could easily put 4. They are. They're not terribly expensive, but they need to be in the right location.
My suggestion would be 15, 14, which is right next to the allotment down Moor Lane. 15, I guess. They can build up a bit of speed by the time they get there. Because I think 16 is right next to the barrier, isn't it? If I've got my bearings right. Yes, it is. Yeah. 16 is just before the bridge. As if you're going to allotment, yeah.
I mean, once you get to the High Street, it's already... Once you get to the High Street, it's 30.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really... Yeah, it's really before you get into the High Street, isn't it?
So I think 14, maybe 6 down Moor Lane, and then on the other side, one on Hatch Lane, one on Holloway Lane. Are they speeding in? Yeah.
So I think Hatch Lane is already 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, to pick up whether they're already doing over.
I think if in your estimation the traffic is already exceeding the limit, it's useful information for us to have.
Yeah.
So the objective is to build up a picture of what traffic is actually doing in the area in reality. It's your call where you would like to see some.
And could we have one sort of earlier on in the sort of? Would it be useful having one sort of? I mean, I'm all new to this sort of side of things in terms of where to put things. What about sort of something before you get to the sort of village green, which would be 6 and 8, that sort of 6, 7.
Yeah. Okay. In the High Street. Yes.
Yeah, because I think that's where people tend to pick up when they're coming out from the school. They'll sort of put their foot down and goes, So I think, and one Hatch Lane, maybe around 6 and that sort of location, 7 and 8. And then, as we set up in, was it 14?
Yeah, 14.
14. And
that's 4, I think.
Yeah. Is that 4? Yeah. Okay.
That sounds pretty.
That's sufficient.
Yeah. Is that sort of?
I mean, it's really a question of looking at the roads that you're most concerned about, and then citing the survey tubes in such a place on those roads that will give us the most accurate information and reflect the story that you're telling telling us within the petition. So that's what we're trying to do.
What I would say is I'll take these away. If you think you've got some time and opportunity, if you say, having discussed it amongst yourselves, you think, well, actually we'd like one in another location, just let us know, because in terms of the surveys themselves, we always undertake these at sensible times. So we won't be undertaking them in the school holidays for obvious reasons. You've mentioned the fact that the challenges, as you know, you've said about some of the parents sometimes can unfortunately be part of the problem. So we will normally commission these surveys, and Councillor Riley will consider another petition later on this evening, and I'm sure there'll be some requests for these surveys. We tend to do them as a batch. We don't do them ourselves. We commission them independently, so nobody can accuse us of, if you like, manipulating the figures. We get an independent company. That's the most efficient way to do it. And I suspect we will be looking at probably doing these in September time, because it's sensible to do it when the schools are back, and hopefully when traffic levels all go being are much better, more like the normal levels. So I've taken what you noted, what you said. If you think there's some, you could go away and think, oh, I wish I thought about such and such location. Just let us know. You've got plenty of time to do that.
And do I come back to the Democratic Services with that information? Who do I contact?
I think you may have in fact been in touch with my colleague Asif.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you've already been dealing with him.
Yeah,
He's unfortunately can't be with us tonight. I would suggest liaise with him because he's managing the project effectively. So he would be happy to work with you on that.
And can I just add one more thing? We have sort of reached out to the safety team, road safety at the school, so we're doing work with them already.
Excellent news. Thank you very much indeed. So let's continue that. Yes.
Yeah, I think Asif referred us on to
yes.
your guys who.
Yeah, well, I've got a colleague. In fact, Steve, who was here earlier on, and he's got a team who are actually very much engaged with that. And as Councillor Riley alluded to, the fact there's a great feeling coming out of working with the schools when the children can be part of that. So let's develop that.
Yeah, and the school designed the 20-mile-an-hour limit for in Harmondsworth for the bits that are 20 miles. There's as you drive on the part of Hatch Lane.
Okay.
That you'll see a swan and the Great Barn, which form 20 miles an hour. But that's only in that zone. Yeah. So the school have been really involved. There was a competition where the school children were sort of tasked to design. We
may be able to sort of rekindle that and do something
really
of a similar nature.
Yeah.
And I think, as I say,
get the kids involved.
It's a great opportunity, and it gets the families of the involved as well.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And the other thing that I think just to comment on is something that your ward councillor said, which is about signage. I mean, one of the things I'm quite keen on, and I know my officers are, is as far as we can, is to have clear signage rather than multiple signage. I mean, going down the A40, for example, going into London, there are different speed limits, and it just drives you mad that it's 40, 50 something, and there's just too much. And what we're aiming to do in many areas, as far as we can, is to have really clear signage, not too much, because it does end up being confusing. And so that essentially we can say, look, this is what we want to have happen here. This is what we want you to abide by, and there can be no confusion, and to be much more positive about changes of speed limits and all the rest of it, so that we've got a consistent approach. So I think that's something certainly we're trying to aim for anyway. All right. Well, look, unless there's anything else, and obviously you can, if you want to raise anything else, you can go through Ward Council and they can tell me, and we can deal with it that way. But yeah, if you've been working with SCP already, that's great. But don't look upon this as being a kind of finality. If there's anything else that you think about, or do you think, I should have said that or this, you can still feed it through to us, and I'll take it into account. All right? Okay. Thank you very much. That's great. Thanks.
If I start, most of you know me, David Knowles. I'm the Head of Transport and Town Centre Projects for the Council.
Good evening, Chairman. Alan Tilley, Transport Planning and Development Team Manager.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anisha Teji and I work in Democratic Services.
Work, and that will pick up your voice.
Okay, where to start really? Over the years, I think David Knowles will tell you, we've had lots of problems. I'm going to start concentrating on where I live, and then I'll widen it out. I have the misfortune of living on Dawley Road, okay, which there's only 23 properties where I live, and I think it's probably within 3 years, the telegraph pole has been knocked down by a car speeding. There was a police chase after that. Traffic lights have been hit twice and broken. A wall at one house was knocked down and the car in that garden on the front was destroyed. Further up the road, another wall and another car was destroyed. The railings over the road. There was a smash in top of Swallowfield Way not so long ago. I think I sent David the photograph of the car and its roof. I now know what donuts are. There are people that go round roundabouts the wrong way, and Jazz knows more about that. Something to do with the way that they spin round. But that I unfortunately have a mini roundabout pretty near where I live. My biggest concern is we are just part of the route. I have got a map here that shows exactly where the route is, but it incorporates a large portion of our ward, and also Pinkwell ward, because it's something about it's either the chicanes that they can manoeuvre around, or the bridges, or the roundabouts. It's incredibly dangerous. And from my personal point of view, in the properties that I live in, I have 2 people who are disabled. I have one guy who's got Alzheimer's. Now, he was the one that the car hit the wall and knocked his wife's car. He sleeps downstairs, and he was really freaked out about it. I mean, and it's all well and good saying, well, we've asked the police to do something about it. I happen to live there, so I experienced. We did have a proper car meet there. I think it was a couple of years ago, where we looked out the windows, about 100 cars and a burger van. No, honestly, it was well organised, and there were cars going up and down the road. There were also motorbikes doing wheelies on the footpath, and then I can't remember where the police turned up. I think maybe I went outside and they ran away. No, but they eventually went. But they go off round and do circuits by the Hayes Station. People who live in the blocks of flats in Blythe Road and Station Road have complained. They go down into Pinkwell, where Jazz lives, and I don't know. The police asked us to get this petition up. We've been in contact with the police on several occasions, and Jazz will probably enlarge on that, as will Councillor Farley. They said that the only way that we can do it is something that's got to be enforceable, which is the 20 miles an hour. They've done speed surveys, which, no disrespect to the police or to whoever put them there, but the fact that councillor, only 3 cars went over 30 miles an hour. Yeah, but they might have been doing 80. Let's say one car went over the bridge at Bourne's Bridge, and all 4 wheels left the road. So I don't think that was doing 30 miles an hour, to be perfectly honest.
No, but as we discussed earlier on in relation to other petitions, the nature of these survey strips now are such that we get a great deal more information from them than we used to about just about speed. You can tell how fast something's gone, can't you? And the nature of the vehicle even, and the axles and all the rest of it. So there's quite a lot that we can get now from these surveys. All right, do you want to carry on? Or?
No, I mean, that's, I'd say, Councillor Dillon and Councillor Farley know from driver's perspective. I'm just going from my little bit and the people that live in...
Is there a geographical kind of area, as I look at the map, that you would say, well the area that all this is happening is bounded by certain roads?
Would you like me to give you this? That's...
Okay, well,
that shows...
So that's where you've got the red marks.
It goes literally almost to the Uxbridge Road, right the way down, incorporating all these, and this is most Pinkwell Ward as well. Yeah. It's quite a long route. And we've also got, I've got a picture here of several cars drive without registration plates. I don't know why they do that.
It's interesting that you say that the police have encouraged you to put this petition forward, because actually everything that you said so far is police enforceable, and I'm a little disappointed that they should think that this was... I mean, it's a good thing to do to bring the petitions before me, and we can look at different things that we can do, but as you know, there are certain things that the council can do and certain things that the police should be doing.
Well, I'll be perfectly honest with you. We had quite heated conversations with the police because it's their problem to do the enforcement. But they're not... I mean, I even said that they could sit in the gap between the two houses in an unmarked car and just watch what goes on, and they could go out and arrest. Not interested. They go to the council, get 20 miles an hour put in, and all these roads. But we still... How can it be enforced?
Yeah, but if you've got things like organised speed meets, if you've got things like organised, it's so used to being on Zoom and stuff where you don't have to press a button. Now I have to press a button. I keep forgetting. It's all very well, the level of antisocial behaviour by speed that you're talking about is unlikely to be hugely affected by the fact that it's 20 or 30 or 10 or anything. In one sense, I mean, yes, of course, we can have a look at 20 mile an hour speed limits, but from what you're describing, these are not the sort of people who are going to take any more notice of a 20 mile an hour speed limit than they are of anything else. But okay, all right, thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a circuit that they operate on, and it does include streets in Pinkwell, North Hyde Road, Station Road, Millington Road, Asda Estate is where they normally meet of an evening, and they've got these loud popping sounding exhausts. So that's the antisocial behaviour aspect of it. The police, if we move on to the police themselves, so Mr. Reiter, who's the inspector, says he spent an absolute fortune trying to ascertain and catch people. And has been unable to because his team are not a response team. So his team, whilst they may identify who the drivers are, and often may have illegal number plates or false number plates, can't then chase them because they're not response. By the time they call the response team out, those guys have disappeared. And trying to chase those guys is very difficult, or trying to find them is very difficult because inevitably they have number plates that aren't registered to those cars. They do know people. I've identified people in my ward, but they can't actually take the cars off them because they're on their land, and they can't. Once they're off their land, they can go and catch them and take them by I think it's a section 16. But if they're on their drive, they can't actually take those motor vehicles away. But they know who the people are, but then they don't have the resources. So that kind of questions how will they enforce a 20 mile per hour zone. And yes, we have had many heated arguments with the police. It's not just one, we've had many, to the point where they've threatened to complain about my behaviour because I am quite passionate about the disturbance, really, to the neighbourhood and People are at the point where they are prepared to take roof tax and chuck them on the road, just to make these guys stop. They say they will have punches and they will stop. I personally have been so wound up by it that many years ago I brought a petition after some footage I took at Asda car park, and that was when I actually went over to confront them. Unfortunately, on that day there were about 100 people, so I decided against that because it's. Are these organised events? There are two different types. There are individuals who will meet at Asda car park pretty much 4 times a week. And they will stand under an undercroft and they will speed away and speed there and speed away. They are at night time, and I suppose they're a nuisance in terms of noise. I've asked Jacqueline Robertson to investigate putting speed humps down Millington Road, and I've not heard anything since our rather heated conference call earlier this spring, I think, with the police, but I've not heard back on that. That's one way to try and stop that activity. The police were also going to look at the Asda car park and have conversations with Asda again. I think that time has lapsed and I don't know what action they take. The police aren't really engaging with us anymore because we have been quite abrupt and we have challenged them, and they're following this very heated argument, which was I would call it an argument. It was supposed to be a nice Zoom call. Their solution was to throw it back at us and say, well, what have you guys done? Well, no, it's not for us to do it. We're not the police. We don't enforce speed. But what have you done? We told you to get a petition together so that we can actually start to enforce. No reasons were given how they would enforce it, how a 20 mile per hour zone can be enforced and a 30 mile per hour zone can't be enforced. But the police themselves believe a 20 mile per hour zone is more enforceable than a 30. Now that's for you guys to question with the police. I don't know how. I would assume it's you have a 20 mile per hour zone and it's easier to catch people, right?
Well, look, it seems to me that there are two clear aspects to this. One is, in one sense, not for this petition, but nevertheless is a very important part of it, which is the antisocial behaviour crime side of it, which I'll say now I'll take away and look at in the other half of my portfolio. But just dealing with the transport side of things, which is the route you've come through as far as this petition is concerned. Yes, we can look at more 20 mile an hour limit roads in the area.
If I make a few comments, I mean, I know we've spoken about this, Councillor Gardner, on occasions in the past, and I know that the fact that you probably didn't even bring a cup of tea out to the policeman that was actually waiting outside your house if he was there to try and catch the speeding motorist. But I think there's a few very interesting points, and it's very good to hear from you this evening, this detail. Some of which we are broadly aware of. There is a challenge because we do need to get our colleagues in the police very much engaged in this. And I sense and understand your frustration in that. There is sometimes a concept that I have an expression which I sometimes use in my family, which is a problem shared is now your problem. And I think there is unfortunately a risk of that, and I think we do need to be our colleagues in the police we do work very closely with and we do collaborate with. We do make sure that we actually have a joined-up approach to this. A couple of observations. You talk about the Asda estate, which of course is Millington Road, and I think you know, Councillor, that one of the challenges for us there is that's a private estate, it's a private road, so the police can actually take action there. In terms of introducing something like traffic calming, which I suspect within this room we may feel would be a good idea on that, to stop the people running around the estate there, is unfortunately not within our gift. Now, I know that you've spoken to Joanne and they're looking at the antisocial behaviour aspect of it. I think that's something that we do need to help support the argument for. I think that's probably the best way I can put that forward. We cannot, as a council, unilaterally put traffic calming in Millington Road, but we can perhaps encourage those who are responsible for that estate, that clearly it would seem to be in their interest to actually have a much more civilised estate, in simple terms. In terms of these events, I think clearly that sometimes these sorts of events I suspect we're talking about are almost like raves, aren't they? In as much as they get spread very rapidly on social media by word of mouth. Somebody turns up next weekend, we're going to have a whiz round the Millington Road, and that's how it happens. And so it doesn't have that level of organisation. Although to hear that a burger van turned up, I think is pretty incredible. That's the antisocial behaviour aspect of it. In terms of a 20 mile per hour limit, very much so that's something that we can explore, and I think perhaps we might need to look at the area as a whole and maybe come at it piecemeal, in as much as we deliver some bits, rather than failing to do everything. If we can tackle some bits of it, I think that helpfully would be very, very useful to do. I know that Alan, who's sitting here patiently, and I think you also know this, Councillor Gardner, he's been talking to developers in the area in terms of certainly Blythe Road and Clayton Road about opportunities perhaps that for something that might come forward on the back of some development there, which actually I think would deliver exactly the sorts of things that you're after. So I think, that would be fair to say. I think that would be very good. But that's one small area. As you alluded to, this is a very large area. It encompasses more than one ward. So I suspect it would be sensible that we do actually do some survey work with the survey tubes on the ground. Let's establish, and you guys know best where we should actually do these surveys to actually get that information. Because if we do that, then we know the extent of the problem where the speeding is at its worst.
Councillor Oswald first.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Most of it really has been covered by Councillor Gardner and Councillor Dillon. Millington Road is private. At one time it was owned by British Steel Pensions Trust. Whether it still is or not, I don't know. But that's where the Asda site is. So you could try that to see and see if we could get some help from them. And I know it was the Pensions Trust because there used to be a business watch there because there were burglaries on a Millington Road site. But anyway, I think 20 mile an hour speed limits is a good start. You've got to start somewhere because this really doesn't need to be solved. I don't know as much as the two speakers prior to me because I don't live there. I used to, but I don't now, and I haven't lived there for a number of years. It wasn't like this when I lived there, but it is now. It does need to be dealt with. There's no doubt about that. 20 mile per hour is a good starting point, I think, and maybe go from there. You made the point, Chairman, earlier when you said that these are police enforceable incidents or words to that effect, and you're right. But how are they going to enforce it? And Jazz has made the point that by the time the response cars get there, the chases, they're gone. And it speaks for itself, doesn't it, really? I don't know, really, Chairman, there's much more than I can add. These are the people that have got the experience of what's going on because they live there. So I'll leave it there anyway. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask one question first. Can we add roads? Because I've had a lot of complaints from residents about Bourne Avenue. We've now repaired the road, but people are now going down at high speed. And I notice when you look at you're saying what we can do, we can put up a 20 mile an hour sign that flashes if we enforce it. And I'm looking at what we can do because what I think is happening is the residents actually want to see some demonstration from the council. They're reacting to these problems, and people are getting frustrated. With your address, you made it quite clear you're interested in assisting people, and I think we have to do something to actually address the problem, because I accept you have difficulties, but if we don't bring this up and make it clear to you that we want, we'd like to have some progress to make sure the residents are reasonably happy, I think that is what I think we want to see happen, because this has gone on a long time. But if you could answer the question about Bourne Avenue, I'd appreciate it, because the first problem I came across as a councillor was an accident on Redmead Road. The cars hit head on a curve there. That was in 2014, And we tried then to track the amount of activity on the road, and I was told there's not enough cars speeding. Unfortunately, the problem is it's the rare driver that causes the big problems as well as so when you do this monitoring, you don't get enough evidence to justify a speed limit. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, okay, I'm going to focus this. It's a bit unusual, but I'm going to suggest it. You five get together and submit a list of roads that you suggest are the most affected roads which would benefit from consideration for a 20 mile an hour speed limit. Send that in within 2 weeks to me, that list. All right? I'll come back to you in a second. And then, because this is a much bigger issue and problem to try and address than the normal sort of a petition that says cars are going down my road too fast. It's not that sort of thing. If we're looking at a very significant number of roads, a sort of wholesale 20 mile an hour overlay, we need to know, A, which ones you suggest are the ones that are that we should be looking at. Then we can look at seeing where, if we can get evidence, not that what you've said isn't right, you know it is, but it's important for us to have evidence, because part of being able to go to the police to say, essentially what we need is an operation here. We need to have really quite sensible evidence-based material to seek that. We know what the pressures and problems are, but this sounds like something that really does need addressing in a fairly radical way. So if I can ask you to do that in the first instance, then we will look at, and in a sense it almost doesn't matter. Normally we would say to petitioners, okay, help us with where we would cite our speed tubes. But in a sense, if you're saying this particular road is one that is used like a racetrack, then we can look at that, and the officers can look at that and cite these things in order to get that information. At the same time, and outside the confines of this petition in regard to transport, I will raise this with the Borough Commander and others to see if we cannot work up some form of operation. Now, clearly, it's not going to be one that lasts for months on end, but at least, and for in other areas, I've had things to do with these organised meets, and the knowledge that at any time there could be a sudden presence of the police is quite affecting. What we can do as a council about individuals who just turn up, I'm not sure, to be honest. But nevertheless, doing something and undertaking various measures to try and mitigate to an extent what is going on, I think is what we can do. David? Yeah,
just to really echo that and reinforce that, Councillor. There's a couple of things I would make a point is we are hearing occasionally of other areas in the borough where this is becoming a problem with these sort of rapidly organised events where people race around, and so it's not unique, but clearly, obviously, it's a primary concern to you because it affects you directly and your residents. So, but I just make that point. It's unfortunately, it does seem to be a societal trend. What I'd also just make the point is, that, and I think Councillor Riley made a very excellent suggestion, if you suggest the roads that you think are the primary concern, one of the things we can do is when we get to the stage of doing those surveys, we share that information with the police. Now, if for argument's sake, I'll just use Dawley Road as an example. Say that we found the survey showed that at 3 o'clock every Friday, somebody's bombing through there on their motorbike at 100 miles an hour, for argument's sake. That information is very useful to share directly with the police, because then they can actually target some of their enforcement. We do sometimes ask the police to share their survey data with us. I have to say it's seldom that we receive very much. Clearly, if we have information, we can share it with them, and that can help with some targeted enforcement. Because what you want to see, ultimately, is a scheme that is fit for purpose, and you want to see enforcement that's fit for purpose that gives the residents the satisfaction that actually that's taking place. To help move towards that, if we can get information that we get from surveys, we can share with the police, then I think perhaps I'll go back to the point I said earlier on, this collaborative approach, if we can get more information. And just briefly, I'd also mention Millington Road, I think, Chair, I think perhaps we need to take away the opportunity to have some further discussion if we can find out who the estate owner is. It may be that some correspondence perhaps in your name may be actually useful to actually, because if you know, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who owns that estate. What do you want? You do not want your estate to be used as an impromptu racetrack. It could be that the owner of this estate could be somebody who's perhaps based in another part of the country. When some years ago I dealt with the people from Stockley Park, the people who came to meet me actually come from Lancashire. They didn't necessarily know the extent of the problem. So I think perhaps, Chairman, if we can discuss that outside this meeting and perhaps see if there's something we can do specifically with that problem. I hope that's of some assistance.
All right, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've tried to get in touch with the guys at Millington Road previously, and I've asked officers to give me names and addresses, and we've not got anywhere, so hopefully you could find some...
If necessary, we'll use the good offices of the Land Registry, I suspect.
Bourne Avenue has just gone into consultation on a 20-mile-per-hour zone because of lorries, etc., that were using it, but we have used... There's past evidence to show that we need a 20-mile-per-hour zone around that area. With that, and then Pinkwell Lane, because of the school being 20 mile per hour, you almost got the full zone there anyway. And just moving back to a previous, I hadn't quite finished when I first spoke. There are cars that speed along Station Road during the day, and this is where you will need to contact TfL, because a while ago they changed the phasing of the lights. So what can happen on occasion, not always, but on occasion, they can drive from the station all the way along to the flyover for the M4, almost all green all the way, or at least up to is it Ashcombe, the lights that just Ashmead, yeah, just before the flyover, you just turn right into Station Road or up the flyover, can all be green. To the point, and I live right opposite, so I see it all the time. And there's one stage where I was almost hit back on my hill by a car speeding because of the way the junction is, and you cross over. They do it, and it's just the road layout doesn't help either. There's a turn right and the turn. If we can have some conversations about that junction also, it would help, because it's a zone where it's problematic. Millington Road, if we could get that sorted, that then makes it so inconvenient for them to travel down Millington Road, up and around onto Bourne roundabout, over to Dawley Road, and then back round into Hayes Town, Blythe Road at night. It's an inconvenience. What we want to do is try and move that problem on. I don't mean to Uxbridge South, because I've had residents contact me from Uxbridge South saying, "Oh, how do you deal with it?" And I'm like, "Well, I haven't dealt with it yet, but I'd be grateful for anything that we could do."
All right, thank you. Did you want to very quickly, because we're near to time? Go on.
Thank you, Chair. The comments aside, because that's one thing, and as we discussed it at depth, but it's an aspect that the council's own car parks are also being used, from what residents are telling me. Actually, I've spoken to residents recently, the sort of gangs are doing sort of wheelies and speeding around and doing iffy business in our car parks. But it's also, say, around Botwell Common Road, Botwell Lane, it's really something that restricts their ability to go at those kinds of speeds. Botwell Common Road is certainly one that residents have complained about, where they come off of Barrowall Road, that speed, or coming in and out of it, because there's nothing there of a sharp corner or anything. And I've asked about that in the past as well. But backing up everything that my colleagues have said, there just needs to be from the residents' point of view, at least something to be seen to be moving on this issue, because we've had issues from Highbury Village. We've had videos sent to us of cars speeding over there, and they can't identify because of the distance, but the sound reverberates around, causes a right nuisance. So the whole aspect of antisocial behaviour goes beyond the speeding, the noise. So as Jezza said, the popping engines and the reverberation of the sound that just goes around, and it's covering a wide field on both wards. Thank you.
All right. We've got the whole picture. Will you get together and draw up that list of roads, which will be very helpful? Send it to me within, as I say, 2 weeks. And sorry? Okay. All right. So that we know how many roads we're looking at and the extent of the geographical area. I will also, as I say, bring police colleagues into this, and I've got an idea about what I'm going to do, and we'll talk about it later. All right. But in terms of once we've got that list of roads, then we can start working on where we're going to put the survey strips. Not in the usual sense, but in order to gather information, gather evidence, so that we can use that to assist our police colleagues as well, because I think this has got far more to do with that side of things than it has with the traditional petitions that I hear about a particular road and a particular series of solutions that we can bring to one road. This is much bigger than that, and it needs a cross-border or cross-discipline effort.
Very, very briefly, just to say, I welcome that if you give us the list of roads, and if you have any thoughts as to where in those roads the problem is the most acute and the survey would be the most useful, you've got that information, that knowledge, that would also be useful, please, if you don't mind. Give us the list of the roads, and you can say, well, actually, I know outside that bit, there's a bend there outside somebody's house, cottage. So there'll be locations within those roads. It's just all useful information for us to actually help tailor that further investigation and take it from there.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you.